What's up, everyone? Coach Tony from Bonbeck Strength, and today I'm going to answer a question that we got from one of our lifters, and that's what causes the hips to shoot up early in the squat. Now, there's one common reason that this happens, and it can show itself in a couple of different ways, but it's primarily caused from a loss of midfoot balance. So one of the attractors of squatting, something that must happen no matter what type of squat you're doing, is that you've got to keep your balance evenly distributed over your feet. So not too much on your toes, not too much on your heels, not to your insteps, not to the outside of your ankles, but kind of evenly distributed. And when you lose that midfoot balance, it's going to shift where your center of mass is as you start to stand up, which generally causes the hips to pop up early. And that can look like two different things. Now, I think it's most commonly shown as kind of like falling forward in the squat. So we start to squat and we lose our upper back position. So our back starts to curve like this, and then the hips rise early. So it kind of turns into a round back good morning. I think that's probably the most common way it presents itself. But then occasionally what you'll see, and this tends to happen with more like narrow stance, like knee dominant squatters, is they'll push their knees forward a lot. Their weight will shift a little bit as that knee angle gets more aggressive, and then their chest will stay up, but the knees will start to extend this way. So the bar will almost get back behind their midfoot. So that's a little bit less of a common squat error, but it will almost look like somebody sitting too far back on a box squat where they just then don't have the leverage to stand back up. Now, both of those are a loss of midfoot balance. Like I said, when the hips extend early, when the hips shoot up early, the joint action that's happening is early knee extension. So your knees, which are extended by your quads, are extending faster than your hips are extending. In the squat, your hips are primarily extended by the glutes. Now, there are a couple of different theories about why this might happen. First and foremost, it's going to be some sort of technical error typically. So if we lose our tightness on the way down, maybe if we're like in an overly extended position, so if I arch my back like this, flare my ribs up and give up my core positioning, what that does is that shifts my balance forward. Of course, if my weight is out over my toes too much, the bar is going to be in front of my feet. My upper back's not going to have the leverage or the strength to stay where it needs to be, so I'm going to cave over like this. If that weight is all over the middle of my foot, this is a really bad position for my hips and knees to extend all at the same time. So what's my body going to do? It's going to reorganize into this position right here. What exercise does this look like? Kind of looks like a bad deadlift, right? So when we're deadlifting, that bar being out over our feet instead of centered over our hip, obviously the deadlift position is going to be the more advantageous way to move a load that's out in front. So if your technique is not up to snuff and keeping that bar over the middle of our foot, our body will reorganize into more of a deadlift position, hence the hips shooting up early to kind of mimic that hip hinge position. So if we create that technical error of letting the bar drift forward, then our hips will shoot up early. Something else to consider is that if you find that your technique is on point and your weight selection is within your abilities, sometimes it's more of a muscular weakness. Now, 9 times out of 10, I would say it's technique. Let's improve the technique, make sure that we hammer that. But if somebody is like just really on point and they still can't avoid the hips shooting up early, maybe we need to strengthen the quads. And the reason for this is that sometimes when we are driving our knees forward and we're a more like knee dominant, quad dominant position, what will happen is that our weaker muscle group will kind of max itself out early. So the quads will extend the knees very quickly to kind of basically like get themselves out of the way, so to speak, and default to what our body perceives as our stronger muscle groups, in this case our hip extensors and the glutes. So if I'm keeping good midfoot balance, that bar is centered over the middle of my foot, everything's all well and good into the bottom, but I'm still getting this. It might just be the body reorganizing, getting the weaker muscle group out of the way, so our glutes can extend the hips from there. In that case, we want to take some extra time to try to build up our quads, our knee extensors. So that's maybe doing some more narrow stance squatting, maybe doing some squatting variations where the quads actually are the limiting factor, something like a Hatfield squat. If you have access to a hack squat or a leg press, something like that can help. if you're a little bit more low tech like us, maybe doing some more lunges or split squats, something like that, to specifically build up strength in the quads. If we bring up the strength of that muscle group, then we can go back to our competition style squat. And when we get into this good position here, our quads will be strong enough that our body won't feel the need to self-organize into a more hip dominant position. You'll be able to extend the hips and knees together because the quads won't feel the need to get out of the way. Now, this is not like a thoroughly proven theory, but it's something that a lot of people who kind of have their feet in both the exercise science and the powerlifting world can kind of agree on, that if your knees are extending early, it's your body reorganizing to what it believes is the strongest position and getting the weaker muscle group out of the way, so to speak. So if you find your hips shooting up early in the squat, first check and make sure your technique is on point. Am I able to maintain midfoot balance and keep that bar centered over the middle of my foot? If you're able to do that and you're still running into trouble, spend some time bringing up the quads, and you'll probably be less likely to have the hips shooting up early.